Sunak has become British Prime Minister after being asked to form a government by King Charles III. How can you evaluate the new political atmosphere in the United Kingdom?
Yes, hello. Well, Britain is usually one of the most calm and stable countries in Europe compared to, if you look at its history, it's had no revolution, no fascism, no communism. Yet it seems one of the most unstable countries in Europe. Today we have our third Prime Minister in 7 weeks. In fact, I was on your channel only last month in September, at the beginning of September, pointing out that we now have the two Liz's. We had Prime Minister Liz Truss and the Queen, Elizabeth II. And now we have two completely different people as head of state, King Charles, and the new Prime Minister, as of an hour ago, Rishi Sunak. So it's quite unlike England and Britain to change things so fast. Sunak's an interesting person. He's the youngest Prime Minister ever. He's only 42, or rather not ever, but the youngest since 1812. He is the first Asian Prime Minister, the first Prime Minister of colour, the first practicing non-Christian. He's a practicing Hindu. This is also interesting because it's exactly 75 years since India gained independence from Britain, and now 75 years later, someone of Indian origin with his parents who are Indian is now Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. So it's a kind of historic sweep. But obviously he's coming in at a very, very difficult time economically, and he has huge challenges, and I think it will be a bit of a nightmare for anyone to be Prime Minister at this point.
Will the government led by Rishi Sunak be able to address political and economic challenges in the United Kingdom is facing?
Yes, so we have record inflation, it's the highest inflation for 40 years. We have very high rising electricity and gas bills. We have a crisis in the health service. We have a crisis in education. And also, this Conservative Party has been in power now for about 12 years. It's the 5th consecutive Prime Minister from the Conservative Party. For those with a long memory, we had David Cameron, we had Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss just for 6 weeks until last Thursday, and now Rishi Sunak. I don't know of any other country or any other democracy that had 5 prime ministers in a row from the same party. So the Conservative Party is a little bit tired. It's really been in office rather too long. There's a lot of infighting within Conservative MPs and different factions and so on. So the challenges that Sunak faces are not only economic, not only to deal with the opposition, not only to deal with the aftermath of Brexit and what will become of Brexit, how will Britain gain advantages which it has not got to date so far from Brexit, but the additional and possibly the greatest challenge of all will be to unite his own party, who are very, very divided. The supporters of the last 2 prime ministers, Boris Johnson, who was Prime Minister till the beginning of September, and Liz Truss, who was Prime Minister till last Thursday, both their supporters may want revenge on Rishi Sunak. They may view him as kind of undermining their governments, and he's really, really got big challenges. Having said that, he is a very capable person. He got good results at Oxford University. Then he got a scholarship to Stanford University in America, in California. And then he worked for Goldman Sachs, which is one of the world's premier investment banks. He speaks well, he's clever, he's articulate. He has good connections with both India and with the United States, having lived in America. He's married to the daughter of one of India's most prominent businessmen. So I hope that Britain will be able to more quickly get trade deals with both India and the United States, which it has not yet got since leaving the European Union. Obviously, these are very important countries, very important economies, India and the US. So this is the 5th Prime Minister in a row by the Conservative Party. He has huge challenges, but possibly he may turn out to be the best of the 5.
Since he's so good with economy, let's say, how's it gonna turn out? Is he going to take care of this economic situation, or is it gonna be bad as Liz Truss?
I'm sorry, there's a technical problem that I can't hear the question. If the sound, yes, I can hear now. Thank you.
I was saying, how do you think Rishi Sunak will change this economic problem? Will it be just like Liz Truss, or will his background help in this situation?
Well, one hopes his background will help because that's the reason he's been chosen, because he does understand finance. Liz Truss had been the foreign minister, the foreign secretary. She had no particular background in finance. Obviously, with these economic problems, it's good to have someone who understands economics and finance as prime minister. However, he was the finance minister himself until earlier this year. So some of the problems Britain finds are the result of his own policies. So we will see. It's a very difficult situation for anybody. Britain has not had the benefits that many hoped for from leaving the European Union, from Brexit. So it has left trade with Europe and so on. They have a labour shortage. They now don't have enough workers in quite a lot of important industries because a lot of the European workers left after Brexit. But on the other hand, Rishi Sunak has those links on the international financial circles through his previous work before he became a member of parliament in 2015. He's only been in politics for 7 years. So certainly Britain has a better chance with him than with someone else. But, you know, we will see. I said a few minutes ago that it's a kind of closing of a circle that 75 years ago, after the UK ran India, now Rishi runs the UK. However, in those 75 years, in many ways, Britain has gone down in its standing internationally. It was, you know, at that 75, 100 years ago, the most important country in the world, had the biggest empire in the world. It's still important. It still has one of the biggest armies. It is has nuclear weapons. It's one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. It's the 6th biggest economy in the world, the 2nd biggest in Europe, I believe. So it's still very important, but slowly, it's slipping down the international sort of league table of powerful economies. So Sunak may be just the person to try and revive Britain. He has about 2 years before the next general election. So we'll see if he turns it around. But, you know, there is a lot of aftermath of problems, not just Brexit. There were Britain had a very erratic prime minister in Boris Johnson, who did not run the country as well as he might have done. He was chaotic in various ways. And also we had now a change of head of state from Elizabeth to Charles. We had the COVID lockdowns. The government borrowed a huge amount of money during those months and months of COVID lockdowns, so there's huge debt. But I think it's a fresh start, both with King Charles and Rishi Sunak. So I think we have to give him a chance. We have to be hopeful. I also think it's symbolically good that a very traditionally white Christian big power like Britain now has a person of color, a non-Christian. He is a practicing Hindu. It is presently the Hindu festival of Diwali, so it's very symbolic that Rishi Sunak, who is married to a practicing Hindu Indian, who's bringing up his daughters as practicing Hindus. I think it's a positive thing for a multicultural modern society like Britain that there should be a non-Christian, non-white prime minister. And although, to be fair to Liz Truss, who's the outgoing prime minister, she also had a very multicultural cabinet. You know, she had people from all different backgrounds in her cabinet. So, you know, sometimes I'm a little bit embarrassed by Britain because it can be a bit racist. They have a very tight immigration policy. They want to send some migrants to Rwanda, which I think is wrong On the other hand, I'm proud of Britain because it's very inclusive. We've had now 3 women prime ministers. We have now an Asian prime minister. I think, well done, Britain. I hope that other countries like France and Germany and so on will be as inclusive as Britain is, with its variety of backgrounds of people in important positions.
How is the public reacting to this? Was Rishi Sunak plan B, or was it a mistake that he wasn't chosen at first?
That's a very interesting question. His campaign, when he ran in the summer and lost to Liz Truss, was ready for Rishi. I personally thought he would make the best prime minister, but clearly the Conservative Party in the summer was not ready for Rishi, which is why they chose Liz Truss. And I think that at the time, there was still a feeling that they wanted an outsider, somebody a little bit like a populist. Boris Johnson had been a little bit like Donald Trump. He was a kind of flamboyant outsider. And Liz Truss, in her way, was also an outsider. Now, even though Rishi Sunak is someone with a background from Asia and India, he is still very much an British insider. It's public school, which means private school. It's Oxford, it's Stanford, it's Goldman Sachs. He's very straight down the line. He's not that ideological as Liz Truss. And I think people realise after Johnson and Truss's prime ministerships that they want somebody to stabilise the situation. And in that sense, I think that maybe the Conservative Party in Britain is now ready for Rishi. Plan B, as you say, whereas it wasn't ready for Rishi a few weeks ago, which is why Liz Truss was chosen, although that turned out, unfortunately for her, to be the shortest prime minister premiership ever in British history of just 6 weeks.
How will his uber-rich elite status affect UK? How will his...
Sorry, your technical person needs to make the sound again.
How will his uber-rich elite side affect the UK?
Yes, that's another very good question. So for people that don't know, his wife is the daughter of a multi-billionaire, one of the richest people in India. Rishi Sunak and his family are he's the richest person to ever become prime minister. He's the richest member of parliament now. They have many billions. He lives a very lavish lifestyle. They live in a house in Kensington. And it's said that he may not move into Downing Street, the traditional residence of the Prime Minister, because that would mean him, his wife and their daughters would have to live in the apartment, the flat at the top of Downing Street. And they're now living in a 5 or 6 bedroom house in Kensington, which is a very nice area of West London, and they'll probably stay there. They also have a house in Yorkshire, and I understand there's a swimming pool that's underground with heating and underground heating swimming pool. Now, this is fine. It's private money. They made it themselves. Good luck to them. But he is going to be asking the British people to make a lot of sacrifices because of spending cuts. And the inflation is really high for the really basic goods. Pasta is up. I think it's doubled. Cooking oil, I think, is 60% up. Bread is 60 or 70% up. Gasoline and so on. So he does come, both himself but also even more through his wife, from a rather elite privileged background, and I'm sure the opposition and the media are going to continually point out that it's okay for him and his rich family, but he's very divorced from people who are increasingly suffering because of the bad economic situation in Britain.
How will the external side affect him? How will Rishi Sunak take position in dealing with the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia?
Sorry, again, your technical person needs to put the sound on.
I was saying, how will Rishi Sunak take position in dealing with the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia? It's not just the UK. There's external forces as well.
Yes. Well, as your viewers may know, Britain has been probably the most significant country after the United States in providing military help arms training. There are thousands of Ukrainians even now in Britain being trained by the British Army. I understand there are various British personnel on the ground in Ukraine helping to train various Ukrainian units and so on. Now, both Boris Johnson and Liz Truss were more foreign policy type prime ministers, and they were very, very supportive of Ukraine in its war with Russia. Rishi Sunak doesn't have a foreign policy background. It's not something we know a lot about. I suspect that he will largely be involved with domestic and economic policies. And I think that whoever he appoints as the new foreign secretary, as foreign minister, will have much more autonomy and leeway to deal with policies, including the Russia-Ukraine war. Having said that, he's going to have to find spending cuts. And Britain has promised Ukraine a lot of money, a lot of arms, a lot of other help, humanitarian as well as military help. And I don't know whether they'll be able to keep up those promises, because everything else is going to be cut in Britain. And we'll see. I don't think he will be as committed as on an emotional level as Boris Johnson seemed very committed to the Ukrainian cause. He went there about 4 or 5 times. The other day, the Ukrainian government, when Liz Truss resigned on Thursday, the actual official Ukrainian government website put up a kind of joke poster. They tweeted it out saying, "Call Boris," based on that American show. The American show is called Better Call Saul. So they had a kind of photo montage of Better Call Saul saying, "Better call Boris." In other words, bring back Boris. So Ukrainians were very much reliant on Boris. I believe they may be naming a street or a square after Boris Johnson in Kiev. I don't think that Rishi Sunak will be so committed. I think he'll keep up British support, but really Britain has huge problems of its own. I'm not sure that they will spend quite as much money arming Ukrainian forces, though they won't abandon Ukraine either.
Tom Gross, thank you so much for your analysis. Let's continue with our news.